Okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Confabulation. We are our sister's house, a domestic violence organization that provides advocacy and education for victims and survivors of domestic violence. If you or anyone that you know is experiencing domestic violence, you can call us at 253 383 4275 or visit our website at oursistershouse.com. I'm Beverly, and today my co hosts are Bethel, David, and Janae. And we're here today to talk about the debacle with Will Smith and what's in the news. All
So what
right,
happened,
guys.
Beverly? Oh, what happened, Beverly?
Well, at the Academy Awards, it seems as though Will was a little upset with Chris Rock's comment, and even though he didn't call Jada's name out, he just his joke was he couldn't wait to see GI Jane 2, and we saw that Will was laughing, and then the next thing you know, there's a slap. So this has been the talk of the news. This has been what's going on in the news for the last 2 weeks. So I think that I'm anti slap. I think he could have maybe handled it differently, but I'm sitting from a different seat. So, you know, I don't know how I would have reacted with someone maybe teasing my loved one. And there seems to have been some history with Chris and Will regarding Jada. So, what's y'all's take on this?
I think that speaking from where it is currently, that it's been blown. I would say a little bit out of proportion because people, do worse things and are still um, not looked at in the light that Will is looked at. I think that the uproar is really where it happened and not the act itself. Um, Sorry, my phone is ringing. But I think that it's caused a lot of commotion, and a lot of people have been giving their opinions on it, which is great and dandy. But I think that from Will's perspective, we've been hearing a lot about his relationship in the media, and I think in that moment he felt the need to defend his wife, and the way he went about it was just, a little frowned upon by the people who were around, his peers and things like that.
Yeah, I think I'm pro slap only because I think that because a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Will Smith could have just grabbed the microphone and like said something instead of slapping Chris," which, that's always an option and I respect people's opinions when it comes to that. It does play into respectability politics a little bit, which is why I don't mind that there was that slap because I mean, people in that like I forgot was it Johnny that said that like people in that room have done so much worse, um, and they're still invited to the Oscars. They still get work. Nothing really happens to them, but because like the slap was just in your face and on stage and in front of everybody, obviously that's why everybody like a lot of people are against it, and I think I have that opinion because I view Chris's jokes about Jada's hair, which is like We all know Black women's relationship with their hair and like how it's discussed in the Black community. Um, I see that as a form of violence just as much as that slap was a form of violence. I think that dismissing the feelings of Jada after being basically embarrassed in front of her peers and in front of the world stage, essentially, at this point, um, I think that that was a form of violence against her, and dismissing that only perpetuates the idea that violence is only physical. So that's the main reason why.
I think I tend to agree with you on that, Bethel. But gosh, I think here we established that it's just where it was, the platform that it was on. And I think I'm anti slap because uh, Will brought in a different element. So it became violent the minute he put his hands on him. So I just wish he had done something differently. That's all. Because at the end of the day, now look at all of the rhetoric. Look at everything that he's going through, the ridicule, the comments, and people are gonna comment and blow things out of proportion, and I would say that's because of the platform and all that. But then I stop and look at what was previously stated. There's a lot of people in that room that have done a lot worse. So, and then I look at it too seriously. Will Smith has made them a lot of money. And now you want to just shut them down.
I keep thinking about, one of the actors that was there, Amy. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but she pretty much said that it kind of, traumatized her in a way. And I want us to touch base on that because that's along the lines of the work that we do. Um, because from her perspective, we can all think like, how can it traumatize you when it didn't direct you, well, when that it didn't affect you directly, whereas we don't know, these people's past, or if they've experienced domestic violence, or if that's something that they witnessed throughout their life. And seeing something like that happen on such a grand platform, where people think that they're in a safe space, and then people are getting assaulted and things like that, it probably triggers people in some ways that we don't know about, or like brings back some painful and traumatic memories. And you never want to put people in those types of situations, in those type of headspace, especially when they're trying to enjoy a show, and be around their peers, and be thankful for each other's presence and things like that. And then it's just something that you just never thought that like you would see. Because yeah, we have these reality shows where people are like, there's a lot of fighting going on and things like that, but to like do it on such a platform such as the Oscars, I think that that's what made it more like, we don't do that here. And for them to try to consider to take his award away, I think is just really, really drastic.
So if no one else has a take, I want to, Janae, you brought out several points. And first, you said we don't know the past. We don't know other people's past, or what they've dealt with and what could be triggering to them, right? So to that point, to go even further, Will was triggered because what the news says that he was 10 years old and he didn't come to the rescue of his mother who was abused by his father. And so that maybe triggered something. He remembered that he didn't come to the rescue of his mother the first woman and only woman probably in his life that he loved, right? Now you're married and someone has offended her or whatever. So maybe that triggered him to come to a point like, okay, enough is enough. And I have the opportunity now to stand up for the woman that I love. And like I said, I don't know what he was feeling, what his trigger was or whatever, or anyone else, but maybe he felt like this is the measure that I need to take, and I'm making an example now, whatever. But um, he was triggered. And then on the other hand, a post said that Chris Rock was abused as a kid, and a lot of people wondered why didn't he fight back, or what, his reaction was wow, and he did nothing. But then we see his brothers coming to verbal rescue, like Will doesn't know how many rocks there are, and try slapping me, as Kenny said, and Tony. So um to that point, we don't know what triggers people. And obviously Will was triggered to, the point. And then, I read Amy's post, and I was like, she made the comment, she was sick to her stomach every time she thought about that. And my thought first was like, how, why, it didn't involve you. But like you said, we don't know what triggers people, and what in that action brought out, some things. So I don't know.
I saw a critique of Amy online after she made that comment that she wanted to make a joke about, was it Alec Baldwin? Was he the guy who he was on set and he accidentally shot somebody and like fatally shot them? She wanted to make a joke about that. Um, and people were bringing up, I guess, the hypocrisy in wanting to make a joke about somebody who literally lost their life in a tragic accident, like filming a movie where, the award show is for people acting and whatnot. um and then saying that she was traumatized by the slap, and that was also something interesting that I saw people bring up, because I think it just like goes to show again like what they consider violence, the physical versus that verbal violence. Saying that joke is very, if she had said that joke, it wasn't approved. It like that could have been very insensitive to the woman who died, her family, her loved ones, and even Alec Baldwin's family, probably, because I don't know. Personally, I feel like you shouldn't joke about something like that, but yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was interesting.
I think that was a great point, Bethel. I want to loop back into what Bev said. I completely agree. Like, we can't, control how people are triggered and how they respond to trauma, traumatic situations. Like Will said in his apology, we're all like a work in progress. So yes, of course, he could have handled that situation very differently. But like, we all don't know what we would have done if we were in that situation. Everybody's like, "Oh, it was just a joke. I would have laughed it off." Well, I guess we'll never know. And another thing that I want to bring up is that his brothers, Chris Rock's brothers, coming to his rescue, um, is very telling because you know he we don't know. Like, Chris Rock might have been somebody who grew up bullied, and him not responding to Will in that moment wasn't shocking to them because they've probably seen their brother go through things like that at school, maybe at home, and maybe that's where his comedy stems from. Maybe it's like a defense mechanism for him, and that's how he was able to, you know, um, create his own voice out of, being a little insecure. But we never know. And since he hasn't spoken up for himself, he has those older siblings and those older people in his life that will speak for him. And Bethel, I want to touch on what you said as well. So there is a little thing going around, there's so many different perspectives about this whole thing, but one thing that I did hear was that Chris Rock may have not even written the joke. And if that is something that's true and one of the writers wrote it, I think that there is like a lack of mindfulness of what people, think is funny. And that might genuinely be a problem because why do you not know that that could be inappropriate to say? Or if you knew that since Jada is open about having alopecia, why would that be something that we would talk about, on this platform? And I think that people have gotten comfortable with handing off, how do I put this into words? Like making people who can relate to each other say things that could be genuinely inappropriate if somebody else said it. And I think that that's something that definitely needs to be talked about because just a few days ago, Regina, I get them mixed up. I'm going to guess and say Hall, said a joke about LeBron James's hairline on one of these award shows, but she was reading a teleprompter, which means that somebody wrote that in there for her to say. And it's like, didn't we just go through this? That we don't know what people are going through. Why are these hair jokes? Sometimes they're a little insensitive. And I think that it just comes from people needing to be more mindful about the things that they're saying because you just never know what people are going through. And this actually loops back to Chadwick Boseman and on his final years in the industry when he was getting so small and everybody had like a lot of bad things to say about him, like, oh, he's on drugs. And little did we all know he was literally sick. And you go back to like, dang, I was a part of that crowd that was claiming that this man was on drugs and the whole time he was transitioning. Like, it's a scary thought.
Mm, I think that was very good, Miss Janae. And
Thank you.
I think that for me, it ties into Black women and our hair, period. Being accepted by the European world, what we go through with our hair, and they joke about it. And still now, you know, a woman walking in for employment or whatever with a big afro, jokes are made, and then we buy into it as a no other way to say it, as a race. We buy into all this stuff, and like you said, why wouldn't we know that that might be offending? Why wouldn't we know that a joke about, especially Black women, how we feel about our hair? The Even though our hair doesn't define who we are, it does in their world. It does. So, on the other hand, thinking about Jada, how did she feel?
And I think it would have been so different if Chris made that joke in front of a room of black people. Like he made this joke in front of we'll say like, the Oscars, the white establishment, a rich white establishment, and that just changes the tone with everything. Like it wasn't with a group of people that understand your struggle. It's a group of people that whose like culture and identity have contributed to black women's insecurity with their black hair, which I think is a nuance that a lot of people don't really take into consideration.
And in a group, like a room full of people who are waiting on us to, demise ourselves so that that can be deemed as something that's funny. Like just waiting on those kind of jokes because they know that they can't say them out loud. So they get other people to say it so that it becomes funny. That's what I seen that night. And I don't know. I don't agree with it. Like I don't agree with it.
Um, yeah, so I was trying to look up why the reasons, because I knew that there were some reasons why that Chris Rock I mean, Will Smith might have slapped him, because I guess there was a past before that. Chris Rock has made some comments. I'm not saying that it was okay for the slap. But he could have, again, he could have gone about a different way. He could have said something when he got his reward award. But obviously he did something. Yeah, I mean, he shouldn't have done the slap, but I mean, I'm fine with him, protecting his wife in, whatever way. I mean, he probably should have done it better. Anyway, besides that, getting past that, is that I know that there was a comment that he made, even though it was very public. Celebrities know what it's like to be a celebrity, and so he made a comment or something. I guess I can't remember exactly what the comment was, but he was saying something when the red table talk about the August situation where there was some type of infidelity or something. I don't know exactly what it was, but there was some situation between her and another man outside of their marriage. Um, and Chris Rock made a comment about that. And then there was another time where Chris Rock, she's been Jada has been boycotting the Oscars, well, Academy for a while, because the point of, black people have been nominated and stuff like that, but they don't get an award, so they're just filling up seats with black people. And I'm not saying that, black people should just get a reward because they're black or and they're acting or something like that, but there have been plenty of, black actors that have done a good job that are worthy of one and they don't get one. And I mean, it's going to happen to everybody sometimes, but I mean, it's, kind of astonishing, sometimes, that I mean, some people do deserve the award that are black. But anywho, besides just saying that, he made a comment saying like, "Oh, we don't need you anyway. The Oscars don't need you anyways. Like, who cares? You weren't even invited." Like, I understand like you don't, side with somebody's comment or you don't side with somebody, but it hurts more when you're the same race, especially, black people, and then you side with, somebody that has, or a group or a whole organization that has, stifled the growth of, black movies and black actors because they just nominate them or they don't even nominate them, even though they are worthy of Oscar Academy. I keep on getting up for. I don't even watch these shows. The only reason why I even knew about it was because of the slap. Anywho, so he's made comments before about his wife. So that's probably the reason why Will Smith was like, "Keep my wife's name out your mouth." Like it, it, it probably hurt him more. I mean, I can't say what exactly what he felt, but it probably hurt him more that it was, a peer. It was, another black man saying those comments about his wife. And I mean, at the same time, you got to be careful, saying stuff about somebody else's loved one. You might not act the same because I know I don't act the same way. Like if somebody makes fun of me, I probably can take it. But if somebody makes fun of my family or, somebody, a significant other, mm, you might have barked up the wrong tree. So I'm not saying the slap was okay, but I'm saying there's a few things to consider and not just say, oh, he slapped him. He shouldn't have done that in that event and all that stuff. He could have handled it differently. But I respect that he, stood up for his wife, even though, they might have, a rocky marriage. And I know everybody has their own problems in marriages and stuff like that. But, I respect him for standing up for his wife. And also Chris Rock could have kept some of his comments to himself. So he somewhat brought this upon himself. So
I think another thing I want to add to that I want to ask you guys is how do we diminish, what's funny and what's not? Because when people are comedians and they get up on these stages, people in the audience, like back in the 90s, Def Jam, like it's fair game, like Martin Lawrence got on so many people in the audience. It is crazy. So these type of things happen and sometimes they're hecklers, sometimes there aren't, but as a comedian, when you're on that platform and you're telling these jokes, when are they just like when is it where's that line drawn where it's like this is not funny, but at the same time they can be like this is what I do, and be careless about it in that way. So how do we draw those lines of what can be funny and what's not when we're talking about comedians here and them not really thinking about the severity of what comes out of their mouths. But what I've been, hearing a lot from Cal Williams, who is also a comedian, like a true comedian is able to adjust to the times. the current times. Like if something used to be funny, but now comedy is changing its route, and now certain things can be a little enticing, then as a comedian, you should be able to adjust to that instead of being like, "Oh, I don't care. Like, I've been a comedian since the '90s. Like, whatever I say goes," type thing. So, how do we define where to draw those lines, and how do we decide, what's funny and what's not? Like, who are we to say that to comedians?
Uh, oh,
Well,
go
I think it just depends. I think you still got to leave it up to the comedians at the end of the day, because they're the professionals and they know how to make jokes. And sometimes you do have to, do that borderline, because sometimes you do have to make jokes about, like, something serious. Just because, like, it might be something serious, but at the same time, you want to bring, maybe some education to it with a joke or something like that. I mean, that is kind of like the fine line between somebody being funny. That, I'm not saying, it's just, I guess you got to like this comedian, and, you got to also know that the comedian has to walk that rope. And sometimes that it's, like that with, I'll go back to legal advocacy. I can't give legal advice, but you definitely want to help out your clients. But what, I can easily get in trouble for giving someone legal advice. So, walking that fine line is sometimes hard. So I mean, even any type of profession that you're in, especially if you're good at it or whatever, you have to, walk. Sometimes you have to walk a fine line, of, giving good services, but also, making setting those boundaries. So ultimately, I don't know how. I don't want to, stifle anybody's free speech, but yeah, I guess that's my take on it.
I'm glad you brought up Cat Williams because I was also thinking about what he was saying about how basically what you had said about what he shared, but um I was reading online, especially after that quote of him resurfaced. If you are in comedy, because a lot of people are saying like Will Smith getting away with slapping Chris Rock set a dangerous standard for comedians because now audience members will feel comfortable to go physically attack a comedian if they feel offended by a joke, which I don't think that's the case. Like Will Smith is a celebrity, Chris Rock is a celebrity. I don't think people are going to go up to their like local comedy show and slap a comedian. Like I don't think it's you can compare the two. Um but people were saying that if you're a comedian and you can't be funny without being offensive, you might not be a good comedian. Um, and different things are offensive to different people. Obviously, we're not all the same, but I think that's true because there are so many like there's so many words in our language, so many phrases in our language, so many options to make jokes about without having to belittle other people's appearances, their cultures, their language, their background. And like obviously now people use the term like politically correct and um like 20 years ago you might not be able to get away with a joke that was said then now, which like some people say is a bad thing because of David talked about free speech, like is that stifling free speech? But also yeah, free speech exists, but the consequences of free speech also exist. Like just because your free speech is protected doesn't mean you're protected from those consequences, which I think is a fair deal.
I think how this, ties back into the work that we do is, as advocates, just always remembering to, be mindful of the way that we speak to our clients, and being aware of what they're going through so that we know how to be those supportive people that we are, and that goes back to, being the friend of somebody who is in a domestic violence situation, and how you can go about being mindful when you're around them, and thinking about the things that you're saying and the jokes that you're making, because certain things aren't funny to people sometimes. It reminds me of a scene in, I'm pretty sure we've all seen the movie What's Love Got to Do with It, when Angela Bassett visited her friend who used to be in the band, and they were making jokes about Ike, and then her friend made a joke that was super triggering, and she just shut down, and she didn't think that that was pretty funny. So it just reminds me of things like that. But I think how we can, use this situation to be better at what we do is just remembering to just watch, like, how we approach our clients and how we're speaking to them in these times that they're in.
Yeah, I think that's important, and I also think it's like, you can't always control what somebody's gonna say, but we can control our responses. So I think that's also, being mindful, because you know, somebody might say something offensive, a client might say something offensive, and you can't just, react any type of way. And um, you just gotta, make sure you set those boundaries and stuff. So that's very important as well. So.
Okay, so this has been good. And we want you to remember that our sister's house is here for you. We are a domestic violence organization that provides advocacy and education for victims and survivors of domestic violence. Thank you so much, Bethel, David, and Janae, and our audience that is listening or watching. If you or anyone that you know is experiencing domestic violence, don't hesitate to call us at 253 425 4275 or visit our website at oursisters.com. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great weekend.